convoy slowed on a crowded street when Ibrahim Traoré saw her. A young woman heavily pregnant sat barefoot on the burning pavement, her hand trembling as she begged for coins. Dust swirled around her vendors, shouted motorcycles roared past. Yet no one stopped. No one cared. In that instant, Ibrahim felt a knot tighten in his chest. This was not just another passerby. This was a turning point. Ibrahim stepped out of his car, the hot air rushing against his face. His security detail moved quickly, but he raised a hand. Stay back. The noise of the street softened in his ears as he walked toward the woman. She sat hunched, her belly heavy, her shoulders trembling under the sun. Her dress was torn, the fabric faded, and her bare feet pressed against the burning asphalt. He lowered himself, kneeling, so his eyes met hers. For a moment, she could not look at him. Shame weighed heavier than her body. When she finally lifted her gaze, her eyes carried exhaustion far beyond her years. "What do you need most right now?" Ibrahim asked gently. Her lips parted, but no sound came. A small tin lay on the ground between them, barely holding a few coins. Passers-by slowed to watch, whispering some, even smirking. A man muttered cruelly, "She chose this fate. Who told her to bring a child into misery?" Another woman shook her head, pulling her child away. The pregnant woman's hand moved to her stomach, as if to shield her baby from the words. Tears slipped down her cheek, cutting through the dust on her face. Ibrahim's voice grew firm enough for the crowd to hear. A nation is judged not by its palaces, but by how it treats its most vulnerable. Today, we are all being judged. The street fell quieter. Even the vendors lowered their voices. The woman whispered at last, her voice cracked. "I don't need much, just enough to keep this child alive." Ibrahim's chest tightened. Around them, the city's rhythm pressed on. Motorbikes sputtered, carts rattled, and the smell of roasted peanuts mingled with exhaust. Yet, in this small circle of silence, time seemed to pause. Before he could say more, the woman swayed, her breath shallow. Ibrahim reached forward, steadying her shoulders. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Phones lifted, cameras pointed. Some expected him to simply offer money and leave. But Ibrahim did not move away. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low but steady. "This woman does not need pity. She needs dignity. And dignity begins with us standing beside her, not above her." The woman's sobs grew louder, her body shaking as the weight of hopelessness poured out. Ibrahim stayed, one hand resting lightly on her arm, letting her cry without shame. Then he rose, turning to the crowd. "If one mother is left to beg in the dust, then we have all failed. But I will not let this failure stand." The people stared, some with wide eyes, some with tears brimming. For the first time, the pregnant woman was not invisible. She was seen. She was heard. The woman's sobs quieted into shallow breaths. Ibrahim helped her sit against a cracked wall, shielding her from the crowd pressing closer. He waited patient until her trembling eased enough for her to speak. "My name is Mariam," she whispered. "I had a husband once. He was a builder, strong, proud. One day a scaffold collapsed and he never came home." Her voice faltered, but she forced herself to continue. "His family blamed me. They said I cursed him. They threw me out of the house we shared." Ibrahim's jaw tightened. Around them, the street grew still. Even the vendors seemed to pause, ears leaning toward her words. "I went to the hospital," Mariam said. "I begged them to help me, to check the baby. They looked at me and asked for papers for insurance. I had nothing. They said, 'We cannot waste a bed.' I walked away with nothing but this child inside me." She pressed both hands to her belly, as if holding the baby in place. Her eyes glistened. "Since then, I've slept in alleys. I eat only when someone pities me. I carry shame heavier than this child. People spit when they pass me. They ask why I don't die." Gasps rippled through the listeners. Ibrahim's heart pounded. Memories returned years ago when he was just a student, hungry and broke. He remembered a stranger, an old woman who gave him a small bowl of rice. That taste of kindness had carried him through a night of despair. Now, staring at Mariam, he saw history demanding an answer. He reached for her hand. "You should never have to beg for life," he said softly. "Not for yourself, not for your child." Mariam's tears fell harder. "Do you know what hurts most?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It isn't hunger. It isn't the dust. It's when my baby kicks inside me, and I wonder if it would be better if it never came into this cruel world." The words sliced through the air like a blade. People in the crowd covered their mouths, some wiping tears. A young boy tugged his mother's sleeve, whispering, "Mama, why do they let her suffer?" Ibrahim's chest ached. He thought of the old woman who had once fed him. If she had turned away, would he even be standing here today? He tightened his grip on Mariam's hand. "No child should be born under despair," he said firmly, "and no mother should sit in dust waiting to vanish." The crowd stirred. A man whispered, "Is he really going to help her?" A woman near the front muttered, "Maybe this time is different." Mariam shook her head faintly. "You cannot change this, Excellency. Leaders pass by. They give a coin, maybe two. Then they forget." Ibrahim leaned closer, his voice steady as stone. "Mariam, I am not passing by. I remember when someone gave me food when I had none. Today, it is my turn to remember you." For a long moment, silence wrapped the street. Then a breeze lifted the dust, carrying the weight of her pain across every watching heart. Ibrahim rose to his feet, his eyes sweeping the crowd. "This is not only her story," he declared. "This is our nation's shame, but today it must also be our chance to change." Mariam's sobs broke again, but this time they were mixed with something faint, something close to relief. She leaned her head against the wall, clutching her belly, as if for the first time the child inside her had a reason to live. Ibrahim stood tall, his hand still resting gently on Mariam's shoulder. Around them, the crowd buzzed with whispers, unsure what would happen next. Some expected him to make a promise and walk away. But Ibrahim Traoré was not a man of empty words. Without hesitation, he bent down, scooped Mariam into his arms, and lifted her from the ground. Gasps shot through the street. A few people dropped their baskets, stunned by the sight of a president carrying a barefoot woman in rags. "Clear the way," he ordered firmly. His voice cut through the noise like thunder. The security guards rushed forward, opening a path. Vendors pressed against their stalls. Children climbed onto steps, and phones lit up recording every second. Mariam clutched his jacket, her breath short. "No! Excellency, please. I'm too heavy. I'll shame you." Ibrahim looked down at her, his tone steady. "You are not a shame. You are a mother. And today I will carry you, as you have carried life inside you." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some covered their mouths, others shouted blessings. Tears spilled from strangers who only minutes ago had walked past without a glance. The convoy doors swung open. Ibrahim stepped in, still holding her as if she were family. His guards tried to take her, but he shook his head. "No, she rides with me." Inside the car, Mariam wept silently, her face buried in his chest. Ibrahim spoke softly, almost like a father to a daughter. "Your child will not be born in dust, not while I live." The convoy roared forward, weaving through the traffic. Sirens wailed, horns blared as cars swerved aside. The streets of Ouagadougou watched in disbelief. The president himself was rushing a beggar woman to the hospital. At every intersection, bystanders froze, then raised their phones. Some shouted, "God bless him." Others whispered, "Is this really happening?" The city, so often numbed by struggle, felt its heartbeat quicken. Mariam stirred weakly. "They won't let me in," she murmured. "They will say I have no papers. They will send me back." Ibrahim's eyes burned. His voice was low but fierce. "Then let them try. Today they will see that a mother's life is worth more than a piece of paper." As the hospital gates came into view, anticipation rippled through the convoy. The guards leapt out first. clearing a path through the crowd of onlookers already gathering, drawn by the sirens and the spectacle. Ibrahim stepped from the car, still carrying Mariam. The hospital staff stared, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. Never before had they seen a leader walk through the doors with a beggar woman in his arms. The murmurs of the crowd swelled into chants. Hope, hope, hope. The word echoed off the hospital walls, carried by hundreds of voices that had just minutes earlier been silent witnesses. Inside the lobby, a nurse stammered, "Excellency, there are procedures. We need forms." Ibrahim's glare silenced her. His voice struck like iron. Her life comes first. Papers can wait. If anyone dares refuse her care, they will answer to me. The room fell into silence, the only sound Mariam's ragged breathing. Ibrahim tightened his hold on her, his words a vow, not just to her, but to everyone watching. Tonight, he said firmly, Burkina Faso remembers what it means to protect its mothers. The hospital corridors smelled of bleach and fear. Ibrahim carried Mariam past stunned patients and nurses who froze at the sight. Cameras followed, clicking and flashing, as if history itself was unfolding in real time. At the emergency desk, a clerk rose nervously. "Excellency, with respect, this woman cannot be admitted without identification. We need a file, an insurance card." At least Ibrahim's eyes burned like fire. His voice cut through the hall. "If a mother and child must die because of paperwork, then it is not medicine you practice here, it is cruelty." The staff exchanged glances, uneasy, but bound by protocol. A doctor stepped forward, hesitant. "Excellency, we only follow the rules. Beds are limited, resources are scarce. If we make an exception..." "An exception," Ibrahim thundered. "Since when is saving a life an exception? Since when did bureaucracy become more sacred than a heartbeat?" The words echoed through the hall. Patients peeked from behind curtains. Nurses stood frozen, their hands trembling. Mariam moaned softly in his arms, her breath shallow. Her belly shifted, the child inside, restless as if sensing its mother's struggle. The sight fueled Ibrahim's fury. He turned toward the head doctor, who had just rushed down the corridor, his coat flapping behind him. "You will admit her now," Ibrahim commanded. The man swallowed hard. "Excellency, the maternity ward is at capacity. We would need authorization from the ministry." Ibrahim's hand slammed against the counter, rattling the pens and files. The sound cracked like thunder. The crowd gasped. "Authorization," he roared. "I am the authorization. If your ministry cannot protect mothers, then your ministry has failed." For a moment, silence weighed heavy. Then someone in the back shouted, "Yes, he's right." Others joined in murmurs, swelling into a tide of support. The staff looked around, faces pale, realizing the people were watching, recording, remembering. The head doctor hesitated, his pride warring with fear. But Ibrahim stepped closer, his voice lowering into a sharp whisper. "If this woman dies because of your hesitation, her blood will stain your hands forever. Do you understand me?" The man's shoulders slumped. He nodded quickly, signaling the nurses. "Prepare a bed. Now." Relief rippled through the hall. Mariam was placed gently onto a stretcher, her fingers still clutching Ibrahim's sleeve, as if afraid he might vanish. He leaned down, his words soft now. "You are safe. Your child is safe." As the stretcher rolled away, a nurse whispered to another, "No leader has ever done this. No one." But the battle wasn't over. In a side office, two administrators whispered heatedly, their faces tight with anger. "He embarrassed us," one hissed. "He broke protocol in front of the nation. We can't let this stand." The other nodded. "Delay the paperwork. Block the transfer. Show him rules still matter." They didn't know Ibrahim had followed them in. His shadow fell across the room, his presence chilling. "Rules," he said, voice low and sharp. "Do you think rules are higher than the lives you swore to protect?" The men stammered words caught in their throats. Ibrahim stepped closer. eyes blazing. A country that abandons its mothers deserves no future. But as long as I breathe, that will not be Burkina Faso's story. He seized the pen from their desk, signed a direct presidential order across the papers, and pressed it into their hands. Every woman in this nation will be admitted, with or without papers. Consider this your new rule. The administrators lowered their heads, a shame their resistance broken. Outside the office, the crowd had grown larger. Word had spread across the city somehow. Everyone knew what was happening inside the hospital. Chants rose like thunder from beyond the walls. No mother left behind. No mother left behind. Ibrahim stepped back into the corridor, his voice rising over the noise. Today we tear down the walls of indifference. Today we prove that compassion is stronger than bureaucracy. The chants shook the building. For the first time in years, the hospital felt alive, not with despair, but with hope. And Mariam, resting in her new bed, closed her eyes with tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, she believed her child might live to see a better tomorrow. The maternity ward smelled of antiseptic and faint lavender soap. Nurses moved quickly, adjusting IV lines, checking monitors, speaking in hushed voices. Mariam lay on a clean bed for the first time in months, her swollen belly rising and falling with steadier breaths. Ibrahim stood nearby, his arms folded, his gaze fixed on the monitors. Every beep, every flicker on the screen mattered. He was not only the president, now he was a guardian, waiting for proof that life had won over despair. A doctor emerged from behind the curtain, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Excellency," he said softly, "the child is stable. The heartbeat is strong. The mother is exhausted but safe." For a moment, Ibrahim closed his eyes. Relief washed over him like rain on parched earth. He stepped forward, approaching the bedside. Mariam's eyes fluttered open. She looked fragile under the fluorescent light, her lips cracked, but her gaze no longer carried only pain. There was something else, hope, faint but real. Her hand reached for him weakly. Ibrahim clasped it firmly. "You are safe now," he told her. "And so is your child." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought we would die on the street," she whispered. Ibrahim shook his head gently. "Not today. Not while I live." The words were quiet, but they struck the hearts of everyone in the room. A nurse covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Another wiped her eyes, whispering, "God bless him." Outside the ward, the crowd had not dispersed. Families, students, market vendors, even street children, all pressed against the hospital gates, waiting for news. When word spread that the baby's life was safe, cheers erupted. Strangers embraced, tears streamed down hardened faces. For one night, the city breathed as one. Inside, Ibrahim lowered himself into a chair beside Mariam's bed. She studied him through her tears. "Why me?" she asked softly. "There are so many suffering." "Why did you stop for me?" He paused, his gaze heavy but tender. "Because years ago, when I had nothing, someone stopped for me. She gave me food when I was starving. That small kindness carried me forward. Today, it is my turn to carry you." Mariam's lips trembled. She pressed her palm over her belly. "Then, my child will live because of you." Ibrahim leaned closer, his voice firm but warm. "Your child will live because of you, Mariam. You carried life through pain, through hunger, through shame. I only gave you the chance you already deserved." Her tears spilled freely. For the first time in years, her sobs were not from despair, but from release from the knowledge that her suffering had not been invisible. A nurse stepped forward, holding a newborn blanket, its fabric soft and clean. She placed it on the bed beside Mariam. "For the baby," she whispered. Mariam clutched it to her chest, as if it were already wrapped around her child. Ibrahim stood again, his presence filling the small room. He looked at the staff gathered at the doorway. "Remember this moment," he told them. "Every patient who walks through these doors deserves the same fight we gave tonight. Papers do not bleed. People do. The staff nodded, their faces solemn, many with tears glistening. They knew these words would echo long after the night ended. As Ibrahim prepared to leave, Mariam's voice followed him. "Excellency," she whispered, her strength returning in fragile threads. "Thank you for seeing me." He turned his eyes soft. "No, Mariam. Thank you for reminding us all what it means to be human." And with that, the ward seemed to breathe lighter. The city outside roared with hope, the sound carrying far beyond the hospital walls. For the first time, Mariam's child had a future, and for the first time in a long while, the nation believed in its own. The hospital lights dimmed as night deepened. Mariam slept at last, her hand resting on the soft blanket meant for her baby. Ibrahim prepared to leave, but fate was not finished with the night. As he walked toward the exit, a nurse hurried up to him, her face pale. "Excellency," she whispered, "there is a visitor. She says she knows Mariam. She insists on seeing her." Curious, Ibrahim followed. In the waiting area stood a woman, her dress elegant, but worn, her eyes sharp yet nervous. When she spotted him, she lowered her head. "I am Stella," she said quietly. I am Mariam's cousin." Her voice carried unease. "I wronged her," she admitted. "When her husband died, I turned her away. I said she was cursed. I believed lies instead of blood. Now I come with nothing. My husband abandoned me. I have nowhere to go. Please, let me see her." Ibrahim studied her carefully. The crowd nearby had gone silent, listening. This was no simple reunion. It was the drama of betrayal and regret unfolding in real time. "You turned her away when she needed you most," Ibrahim said firmly. "And now, when she has found hope, you return. Why should she accept you back?" Stella's eyes filled with tears. "Because I was blind. Because I let fear poison my heart. I see now what she carried alone. I beg forgiveness not for comfort, but for peace. Even if she refuses me, I must try." For a long moment, Ibrahim said nothing. Then he gestured to the guards. "Take her to the ward, but she will stand at the door. Whether she is allowed inside will be Mariam's choice." The guards escorted Stella to the maternity ward. Mariam, still weak, opened her eyes as the door creaked. Her cousin stood trembling in the doorway, eyes glistening. Mariam, Stella whispered, "I was cruel. I left you in the dust. Forgive me even if you never let me in." The room grew heavy with silence. Nurses exchanged glances, unsure what would come. Mariam's lips parted, her voice weak but clear. "Stella, you left me when I was broken, but tonight I have been lifted. I cannot carry hatred anymore. I forgive you, but forgiveness does not mean forgetting." Stella's knees buckled as she wept. Mariam turned her face toward Ibrahim. "Excellency, I will not cast her out, but I will not let her break me again. Tonight, my child has hope. That is enough." Ibrahim nodded solemnly. "Mercy is strength, Mariam. You have shown more strength than many leaders." The crowd outside erupted into murmurs of awe. In a single night, the story had gained another twist, not only survival, but reconciliation, however fragile. And in that fragile moment, the nation witnessed something greater than politics, a reminder that broken ties could bend but never fully heal, and that even in betrayal, the choice to forgive was a form of power. Weeks passed. The story of Mariam spread across Burkina Faso like wildfire. Videos of Ibrahim carrying her through the hospital doors were replayed on phones in markets, even on village radios. Children repeated his words, "Papers do not bleed, people do." Mariam's life began to change. No longer begging on the hot pavement, she now lived in a modest home provided by the state. Nurses visited weekly to ensure her pregnancy was stable. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid her now greeted her with respect. Some even brought food, ashamed of their past silence. One morning, Ibrahim returned quietly without cameras or guards crowding the room. Mariam, her belly larger, now struggled to rise, but he stopped her with a gentle hand. "Stay seated," he said softly. "You owe me nothing. What matters is what comes next." She nodded, tears shimmering in her eyes. "What comes next?" Ibrahim looked around the small room, his gaze steady. "What comes next is that no mother in this nation will feel abandoned like you did. Your suffering has forced us to act. From this day forward, prenatal care will be free for every woman who cannot pay. And more than that, we will train new midwives in every province." The words struck like thunder. Mariam covered her mouth, her body shaking with gratitude. "You turned my pain into a path for others," she whispered. Ibrahim smiled faintly. "No, you did. You carried your child through dust and despair. You survived when others would have fallen. That strength is now the foundation of hope for many." Outside her home, villagers gathered. They wanted to see him, to hear what he would say. Ibrahim stepped into the sunlight, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Look around you," he said. "We are judged not by the wealth of the rich, but by the fate of the weak. If even one mother begs in the dust, then our nation is unworthy of its name. But if we lift her up, then all of us rise together." Cheers broke out. Women raised their children high, men placed their hands over their hearts, and elders nodded with pride. The message traveled further than the village. Newspapers across Africa carried headlines, "No mother left behind." Leaders in other nations debated whether to follow Ibrahim's path. Activists shared Mariam's story as proof that dignity was possible even in the harshest places. And Mariam, once invisible, became a symbol of change, not because she had been pitied, but because she had been seen lifted and honored. The sun dipped low over Ouagadougou, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Outside the small clinic where Mariam now received care, a crowd had gathered. Children played at the edges, women held babies on their hips, and men stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces turned toward one man. Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, carrying Mariam's newborn daughter in his arms. The baby's tiny fingers curled around his thumb, her breathing soft and steady. For a moment, the street fell silent, every eye fixed on the fragile life cradled against his chest. This child, Ibrahim said, his voice steady and deep, was almost lost to dust and despair. But tonight she rests in hope. Her name is not only hers, it belongs to all of us. She reminds us that the future is born not in palaces, but in our willingness to lift one another. The crowd erupted in applause. Mothers wept openly. Fathers raised their fists in solidarity, and children shouted her name. Hope, hope, hope. As the sun sank behind the rooftops, Ibrahim handed the baby gently back to Mariam, who clutched her child to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked at him with gratitude that words could never capture. Ibrahim turned once more to the people. If you believe no mother should ever be left behind, if you believe compassion is stronger than despair, then let this story live in you. Let it guide you. He raised his hand, the setting sun, casting his figure in silhouette against the flag that waved above. If this story touched your heart, he added his tone soft but commanding comment, 1 below. If it did not comment, 0. And never forget, our nation's greatest wealth is not gold, but the dignity of its people. The crowd cheered, their voices carrying into the twilight, as if promising that the lesson of one mother's survival would echo far beyond this night.